The scream tore through the jungle like a crack of thunder. It wasn't human, but it was unmistakably a cry of pain. High-pitched, guttural, and filled with a kind of fear that only came from staring death in the face. Birds scattered from the treetops, and even the insects seemed to still. Something was very wrong. Ranger Liana froze mid-step, her hand instinctively tightening around her walking stick. She was deep in the heart of the Mukani Reserve in southern Africa, surveying a drought-affected stretch of brushland when the cry shattered the stillness. She wasn't new to the sounds of suffering in the wild, broken wings, orphan cries, the aftermath of a predator's hunt, but this was different. This was a plea. She picked up her pace, crashing through thorny shrubs, ducking under hanging vines. The air smelled of dust and sunburnt leaves, but beneath it, faintly, there was a sharper scent. Blood. The closer she got, the more it stung her nose. Then she saw her. A small, emaciated antelope, no more than a few months old, lay crumpled at the base of a dried-up creek. Her leg was grotesquely twisted, clearly broken. Vultures circled above, already anticipating the inevitable. The calf's ribs heaved with every breath, her eyes wide with terror and pain. She had clearly been alone for days. No mother in sight. No herd nearby. Just her, and death waiting. "Oh no, poor baby," Liana whispered, her heart sinking. She descended slowly, trying not to scare the animal any further. But the calf's ears twitched at the sound, and she struggled to rise, braying in panic. She couldn't move. The leg wouldn't support her. "I'm not going to hurt you," Liana said gently, crouching a few feet away. "You're safe now. You're okay." But even as the words left her mouth, she knew they weren't true. This calf wasn't safe. The sun was setting fast, and the reserve's night shift, predators, were beginning to stir. Hyenas, leopards, wild dogs. All of them hunted this area. And all of them would smell the blood. She looked down at her comms radio. No signal. Of course. The reserve's southern pocket was a dead zone, something they'd been meaning to fix for months. She had to make a decision. Fast. Her jeep was parked over 2 miles away, and carrying a struggling calf that distance was unthinkable alone. She could leave to get help, but by the time she returned, the calf would be gone. Torn apart. She'd seen it happen before. The bush didn't wait. Her gut twisted. Every instinct told her to run for help. But every beat of her heart said, "Don't leave her." Liana slid off her pack and started pulling supplies. Gauze. Saline. Emergency tarp. Her fingers moved on their own, trained from years of wildlife first aid. But then, everything changed. A sudden growl cut through the silence. Oh, it. Terrifyingly close. Liana's eyes darted to the top of the creek. There, standing in the orange glow of the setting sun, was a leopard. Majestic. Powerful. Its rosette coat shimmered like gold silk in the fading light. It was massive, likely a dominant female, and her amber eyes locked instantly onto the injured calf. Liana's breath caught in her throat. This was it. There was no escape. The leopard had heard the cries too. And now it had come to claim its prize. She stepped protectively in front of the calf, arms raised, not to fight but to appear larger. "No, please," she whispered. "Don't." The leopard didn't move. Didn't flinch. Just watched. Seconds passed like hours. Then, something unbelievable happened. Instead of pouncing, the leopard slowly, cautiously, descended into the creek. Liana's body tensed. The calf let out a whimper. But the leopard didn't attack. It approached the injured animal slowly, tail low, eyes strangely soft. Liana couldn't believe what she was seeing. The leopard lowered its massive head and nuzzled the calf. Not a bite. Not a growl. Just a gentle nudge of the muzzle, almost like a mother waking her young. "What are you doing?" Liana breathed, frozen in disbelief. The calf trembled beneath the leopard's breath, but didn't cry out. The big cat circled the injured animal, brushing her side. The calf whimpered, but the leopard stayed calm, emitting low, comforting purrs. Then, most astonishing of all, the leopard laid down beside her. Liana felt her knees go weak. This wasn't a hunt. This was something else. The leopard, impossibly, was protecting the calf. And Liana didn't know why. All she knew was that the sun was now gone, the stars were emerging, and she was stranded in a dry creek with a dying antelope, and a wild predator acting like a guardian. But predators don't just care. Not like this. This wasn't normal. This wasn't survival. This was something deeper. And in the pitch-dark African wild, as the sounds of hyenas began to echo in the distance, Liana realized something chilling. If she moved wrong, if the leopard changed its mind, or if another predator showed up, none of them would survive the night. Not the calf. Not the ranger. Not even the leopard. And the clock was ticking. The air was thick with tension. Every sound in the dark now felt amplified, the crackle of dry leaves, the distant wails of hyenas echoing across the savanna, the slow, deliberate breath of the leopard lying barely 6 feet away. Liana crouched motionless, her body trembling, not from fear alone, but from the crushing weight of uncertainty. What was she supposed to do? She was alone, miles from help, watching a full-grown predator act in a way that defied everything she had ever been taught. The injured calf rested silently beside the leopard, still breathing, though faintly. It had stopped trying to move. Whether that was due to exhaustion or trust in its strange protector, Liana couldn't tell. What she could tell was that time was rapidly running out. A shuffling sound to her left made her spin around, heart pounding. It was just the wind brushing the tall grass, this time. But there were real predators out there, ones without this leopard's mysterious restraint. They wouldn't hesitate. They'd smell blood and follow it. And they were coming. Liana's eyes darted back to the leopard. It still hadn't moved, except to occasionally lick the calf's wound. The act was gentle, careful. But then something shifted. The leopard raised its head and stared directly at her. Not with hunger. Not with aggression. But with awareness. Like it understood her presence. Like it was waiting for her to act. A bolt of clarity struck her. This wasn't about danger anymore. This was about a fragile, impossible alliance. And if she didn't act now, this bizarre miracle would turn into a tragedy. Very slowly, Liana reached into her pack and pulled out a small vial of ketamine, an emergency tranquilizer. She didn't want to use it unless absolutely necessary, especially not with the leopard this close. But the calf was suffering. She had to splint the leg, hydrate her, and maybe, carry her out. But how? The leopard stood. Liana froze. It stepped toward her. 1, 2, 3 paces. Her breath caught in her throat. But the big cat stopped. It looked past her toward the ridge above. Its ears pricked. Then she heard it. Whoop. Hyenas. More than one. Close. The leopard snarled, low and guttural. It turned its body away from Liana and the calf, facing the direction of the sound. Its muscles rippled, tail twitching in warning. It didn't leave, but it was ready. Liana's heart raced. If the hyenas attacked now, the leopard might defend the calf, but it could also turn on her in the chaos. She had to act fast. She moved in closer to the calf, whispering softly. Shoo, it's okay, little one. Just hold on. I'm going to help you. To her astonishment, the calf didn't resist as she gently pushed the needle into a vein and administered the sedative. She waited a moment, long enough for the trembling to fade, for the calf to go limp. Not unconscious but calm. She wiped the blood away and examined the leg. Broken cleanly above the knee. Treatable but painful. She set the splint quickly, hands shaking but precise. She wrapped the wound tight. Then she poured water from her bottle into a fold of tarp and tipped it toward the calf's mouth. She drank. Weakly. But she drank. The leopard growled again, this time louder. Liana looked up. Glowing eyes. At least 4. 2 hyenas appeared at the ridge's edge, eyes fixed on the scene below. Another followed, then another. Their laughter wasn't funny, it was cold, cruel. Hungry. They paced above, calculating. The leopard snarled and stepped forward, tail high, body arched. This wasn't just posturing. This was war. One hyena crept down the embankment. Then another. Liana's instincts screamed run, but she didn't. She couldn't. She stood up. Slowly. Pulled her emergency flare gun from her side pack. Only 2 shots. They weren't weapons, not really. But light and fire could scare off scavengers. She raised the gun into the air. Pop. A burst of red flame shot into the sky, arcing and sizzling. The hyenas halted, startled. The leopard didn't flinch. It lunged forward, teeth bared, a full-throated roar erupting from its chest. Not a growl. A challenge. Liana loaded the second flare. Pop. This time, the hyenas retreated slightly, circling back up the ridge, whining in frustration. The leopard remained rigid, ears forward, body between the calf and the threat. For a full minute everything was still. Then slowly the hyenas backed off. They vanished into the tall grass, their mocking cackles fading into the night. Silence returned. Liana collapsed to her knees, adrenaline finally crashing down. Her whole body shook. She had never been this close to death and been saved not by tools or training, but by a leopard. The cat turned and walked back to the calf. Gently, it lay beside her again, curling around the tiny creature protectively. Tears welled in Liana's eyes. "I don't understand what you are," she whispered. "But thank you." She reached for her satellite beacon. Still no signal. But dawn would come in a few hours. Maybe then she could move the calf. Maybe then this miracle could turn into a real rescue. Until then she stayed, keeping her distance but not leaving. The leopard watched her. Come. Almost peaceful. 3 lives rested in that dry creek. A ranger. A calf. A leopard. An unspoken truce binding them together. But the wild wasn't done yet. And as the wind shifted again, carrying new scents on the air, Liana felt it in her gut. Something else was coming. Something worse. And this time, no flare might be enough. The stillness after the hyena's retreat didn't last. A shift in the air, subtle and primal, swept through the trees like a whispered warning. The leopard's ears twitched. It rose slowly from its place beside the calf, nostrils flaring. Liana could feel it too now, that tightening of the gut. That instinct honed by thousands of years of evolution. This wasn't just the memory of danger. It was new. Something bigger. Something hunting. And it wasn't the hyenas. Liana stood, scanning the tree line, her skin crawling. The leopard stepped forward again, but this time it didn't growl. It remained utterly silent. Eyes locked on the shadows beyond the ridge. The calf stirred slightly under her emergency blanket, still sedated but not unconscious. Then, movement. A blur of gray and muscle slinked between the acacia trunks. Liana squinted into the dark. Wild dogs. Not a small pack either. She counted 5, then 6, then 2 more. Their lean bodies moved with terrifying efficiency, circling like trained soldiers, silent, fast, and deadly. Unlike hyenas, they didn't posture. They didn't hesitate. When wild dogs hunted, they finished what they started. The leopard let out a low, vibrating snarl. The dogs paused, sensing the apex predator. But they didn't retreat. Liana's heart dropped. This wasn't a bluffable threat like before. The wild dogs outnumbered the leopard. And they weren't scavengers. They were tacticians. And they had already locked onto the calf's scent. Liana took 1 step toward her pack, but it was too late. A wild dog broke off from the others and darted straight into the creek. The leopard exploded into motion. The two collided in a flurry of snarls and claws. Dust and fur filled the air as they rolled, the leopard swiping with razor-sharp claws, the dog snapping with bone-breaking jaws. Blood sprayed across the dry earth. The leopard roared in fury, not pain. Defiance. Another dog rushed in. "No!" Liana screamed. Instinct overrode training. She grabbed the flare gun's metal casing, empty now, and hurled it with all her strength at the advancing dog. It struck the animal's side with a sharp thud. The dog yelped and stumbled, momentarily distracted. The leopard regained its footing, teeth sinking into the first attacker's shoulder. It tossed the smaller predator aside like a rag doll. The other dogs hesitated, evaluating the risk. One of their own was down. And this leopard? This wasn't prey. This was war incarnate. A tense standoff. The dogs circled again, snapping and darting in with coordinated feints. But the leopard didn't back down. And then something impossible happened. The leopard stepped back, and looked at Liana. Not just glanced. As if asking, what now? For a beat, everything froze. Liana's mind raced. The calf was too injured to move. The flare gun was useless. And the dogs wouldn't leave without a kill. Unless... She remembered the emergency flashbang. It wasn't a weapon. It was meant to scare off elephants from encroaching villages. A disorienting flash and bang. One use. Loud. Blinding. But just maybe. She lunged for her pack and yanked the cylindrical device free. "Back up," she shouted to the leopard. She had no idea why she said it. As if it would listen. But it did. The leopard moved to shield the calf again. Liana pulled the pin and hurled the flashbang toward the wild dogs. Boom. A blast of light and sound shook the earth. A deafening echo bounced off the walls of the creek. Dust blew upward. The dogs yelped and scattered, ears flattened, tails tucked. 2 ran immediately. The rest hesitated, but the damage was done. Their confidence shattered. The leopard leapt forward, teeth bared, roaring at the fleeing pack. Within seconds the wild dogs vanished into the trees. Silence. Liana sank to her knees, chest heaving. She looked at the leopard. Blood streaked its side, one ear torn, but its eyes were sharp. Alive. Breathing. Still watching over the calf. She approached slowly, hands open. "Let me see her," she whispered. The leopard backed up, just enough for Liana to kneel beside the antelope. The calf's eyes fluttered open. Her breaths were labored but steady. She was alive. Liana gently stroked the animal's neck. You did good, little one. You held on. A rustling in the leaves behind her made her whirl, but it wasn't another threat. It was the sun. First light crested over the horizon, spilling gold and pink across the reserve. The world glowed. Birds began their morning chorus. Insects buzzed lazily. A gentle breeze swept the dust from the air. And with it, a signal. Liana's satellite beacon blinked green. She grabbed it and hit the call button. Ranger Liana to base. Emergency evac needed. Injured calf. Coordinates transmitting now. Static crackled. Then, copy that, Liana. On our way. 20 minutes. Tears welled in her eyes. Relief flooded through her limbs like a drug. She looked at the leopard again. It was watching the horizon. Waiting. Then, it did the unthinkable. It leaned down and licked the calf once more. A mother's kiss. And then, without a sound, it turned and disappeared into the brush, vanishing like a spirit into the dawn. Liana stared after it, heart pounding. What was that creature? A predator? A protector? Something more? She didn't know. But as the rescue team's engine roared in the distance, and the calf stirred weakly beside her, she knew one thing for sure. The wild wasn't just savage. It was capable of grace. The whir of the approaching rescue truck grew louder, bouncing off the acacia trees as morning spilled golden light across the savanna. Liana remained crouched beside the calf, one hand resting gently on its side. She could feel the faint thump of its heartbeat, fragile but steady. The satellite unit buzzed again. Ranger Liana, we're visual. Coming up the south ridge now. She stood and waved one arm. Here. Down in the creek. Moments later, the white Land Cruiser rolled into view, tires crunching against gravel. 2 medics and a reserve officer jumped out. One of them, a tall, bearded man named Daniel, hurried over, his face tight with concern. We got your signal. Is she still? He paused, eyes locking on the calf, then darting around the scene. Wait, where's the leopard? She's gone, Liana said quietly, her voice barely audible over the engine. She protected this calf all night. Even fought off a pack of wild dogs. Daniel blinked. A leopard protected it? Liana didn't answer right away. She knelt beside the calf again and brushed a soft curl of fur from its face. I know how it sounds, but I saw it. She stayed with her. Fought for her. She chose not to kill her. The other rescuers exchanged glances but said nothing. Together, they lifted the calf gently onto the stretcher, bracing her splinted leg and covering her with blankets. The medics administered fluids and adjusted the 4 lines as they loaded her into the back of the truck. As Liana climbed in beside the injured antelope, she glanced back at the trees one more time. Nothing. Only light wind, swaying branches, and the ghost of a memory already fading. But something deep in her bones told her it was real. All of it. 3 weeks later. The Wildlife Rehabilitation Center buzzed with life. The smell of fresh hay and disinfectant filled the air as birds called from open enclosures and injured mammals lounged under sunlamps or in shady corners. In the far pen, under a wide netted canopy, the orphaned calf, nicknamed Shunny by the staff, rested on a bed of straw. Her leg was healing faster than expected. The veterinary team was stunned. Her vitals had remained stable since day 1, and her appetite was returning strong. Liana visited every day. Each time she brought fresh browse, rubbed Shunny's ears and whispered softly to her. The calf would always lean in, nuzzling her shoulder like she remembered the safety they shared under that dawn sky. But something gnawed at Liana. She couldn't stop thinking about the leopard. In all her years in conservation she had seen bizarre animal behavior, but nothing like that. Every time she tried to explain it to someone she felt the words fall flat. Not just because it was unbelievable, but because it was sacred. That moment, that connection, it wasn't meant for others to dissect or doubt. It was meant to be felt. Still, a part of her longed to see the leopard again. Just once. To know she had survived the wild dog attack. To know she was out there. Watching. 1 month later, at the edge of the reserve, Liana stood beneath the same ridge where it had all begun. Shunny was strong enough now to return to the wild. The decision hadn't been easy, but it was the right one. This reserve was her home. It always had been. Daniel and 2 other rangers unloaded the travel crate. The calf stepped out hesitantly at first, ears flicking, legs wobbling. Then she took a few more steps and turned, her big eyes meeting Liana's. Liana knelt, heart swelling. You made it, she whispered. You're free. Shunny lingered a moment longer, then turned and trotted into the tall grass, her tail flicking behind her. Liana stood there long after the others packed up and drove away. She scanned the horizon, listened to the wind, waited, and then, a flicker of movement in the trees. She turned sharply. There, standing at the tree line, half shrouded in shadow, was the leopard. Her eyes locked with Liana's once more. No fear. No threat. Just recognition. A quiet bond forged in blood, dust, and impossible mercy. For a heartbeat, time stopped. Then, just as before, the leopard turned and disappeared into the trees without a sound. Liana didn't follow. She smiled. Sometimes the wild doesn't need to explain itself. It just is. Back at headquarters. The footage from Liana's body cam made its way through the reserve's administration. Though limited and grainy, it showed enough to startle even the most skeptical scientists. A leopard pacing protectively beside an antelope calf. Growling at hyenas. Standing ground. The incident sparked a wave of media interest, wildlife forums erupting with debates and theories. Was it maternal instinct misfired? Was the calf scented with something unusual? Was the leopard sick? Or was it compassion? Liana gave no interviews. She didn't need to prove anything. What mattered was that one life was saved. And that somewhere out in the wild, a leopard proved that the rules we write for nature? They aren't always followed. Shunny grazes under the orange glow of sunset, her limp barely visible now. A flicker moves in the trees. A pair of amber eyes watches from the shadows. Not hunting. Just watching. And somewhere, whether in the hearts of humans or the instincts of beasts, something unimaginable lingers still. A predator showed mercy. And a miracle walked away because of it. Share this story if you believe every life matters. Subscribe to Lion's Shield for more incredible rescues. Would you have trusted the leopard? Comment below.